Well, hello there, and welcome back to Mr. E's Mysteries and Magics. In this video, we are going to compare and contrast the DeLand's automatic playing cards deck with its younger brother, the DeLand's $100 deck. You may have seen these advertised perhaps side by side even, and if you're wondering what the difference between the two is, well, you're going to learn that in this video. And by the way, both of these decks are available through my sponsor, RP Magic Shop. Please check out their website at the link below. Okay, first things first. Not everything that I say here will be verified. I did attempt to contact the current makers of the DeLand's decks. That would be Magic Makers Inc. I got an email back from the president and CEO, a fellow named Rob Stiff, the next day. And I wrote back to him and said, yes, I would love to talk to you. His email said we have lots to talk about. So I thought we were in good shape. He never returned any of my subsequent emails or phone calls despite at least a dozen or so attempts. And I'm sure what happened was that he took a look at my YouTube channel and said, okay, this buffoon has about at the time 51 subscribers, and said, I'm not going to bother wasting my time with this idiot. So I was not able to get any of the questions answered that I wanted to have answered before I did this video, and I'm not going to sit here and take forever to do this. He's obviously not going to get back in touch with me, so we're going to go ahead. I promised I'd do a video on this a long time ago, and I'm getting around to it right now. So let's start with the DeLand's automatic deck. This was first designed in 1913, and Frederick DeLand was the inventor. Those of you who saw my video on the first trick done in public know that I used a deck like this in my first appearance, not this specific deck because that deck is long since lost and gone, but this is an exact replacement of it. And as you can see, I've had this one for quite a long time too. That tuck case is pretty well beat up. So what is on the tuck case? Well, the interesting thing really for me is this stuff at the bottom here. It says S.S. Adams Company of Neptune, New Jersey, and S.S. Adams was the company that for many years marketed the DeLand's decks. And then underneath it says, and this is the interesting part, printed in Belgium. Belgium. Now, this deck has got to be at least, I'm guessing, maybe 20 or so years old. I'm wondering if printed in Belgium, if it was not printed by perhaps Cartamundi, or a subsidiary of Cartamundi that, is now part of them, or a predecessor, or something like that. There is nothing in here to indicate anything of the sort. The sides and the top and bottom simply give you the name of the deck, DeLand's Automatic or DeLand's Automatic Cards. No indication anywhere of who the actual printer was, what company did it, other than that it is owned by S.S. Adams Company. And perhaps it was nothing to do with Cartamundi. I just don't know. And finally, the back of it is the back of the cards themselves. Okay, so let's take a look now at the DeLand's deck, the $100 deck. This, instead of S.S. Adams in Belgium, says at the bottom, Magic Makers Inc., S.S. Adams Company. So Magic Makers owns the name S.S. Adams Company, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, USA. Okay, so we've got a change of ownership since these were printed. And what does the rest of the deck say? Well, it's kind of like the other regular deck. It says DeLand's $100 deck, and then DeLand's deck on top, and the same thing here. A little bit more ad copy and a bit of the legal stuff on the bottom. But the most interesting part is this sticker here, which does not exist on this particular deck. This sticker is a USPCC sticker, and it does indeed say U.S. Playing Card Company on it. So these cards are now printed by USPCC for Magic Makers under some sort of an agreement. This is an older deck. I do believe that the current version of the automatic deck is printed by USPCC as well. Right? Obviously, this was not. So what do you get when you open up the tuck case? Well, let's see. First of all, you get a couple of jokers. Right? Nothing fancy there. You've probably seen jokers like that before. One color, one black and white. This is, again, and this is the automatic deck. You also get this kind of nifty little card here. It's blank on one side, and on the reverse side it has the order in which the cards need to be in order for all the markings to work. So not being very familiar with what this was when I was 13, 14 years old when I first discovered the DeLand's deck, I did not realize then, and found out much later, this is actually nothing more than Cy Stebbins' order. That's all this is. So if you're familiar with Cy Stebbins' order, you're already familiar to a degree with the DeLand's decks. Okay, so you get that nifty little card there. And then the cards themselves, this is a plastic stock. This is casino grade plastic stock. The cards are very durable. They're very nice. I have had these, as I have said earlier, for a very long time, and I still use them. Okay, I still use them on occasion. They are certainly very much ready and available and useful for public presentations. No problem. There's the faces. The faces are, oh, even back then, pretty standard bicycle type faces. Nothing special about that at all. The backs of the cards, as you can see, are all these dials. Gives you a whole bunch of different things that you can do with them. I'm not going to get into it specifically, but it tells you it's a mark deck, so it tells you what this card is on the top. Another dial tells you what the card is on the bottom. That also means, by the way, that if you do something like this, because it's a stacked deck, this card here, it'll tell you what card this is, and then the supposedly mark that supposedly tells you what card is on the bottom will also tell you what the previous card actually is, because if you did this, if you did the cut, this card would be on the bottom, but it is also the card that is simply above that particular card there too. So it tells you either the card above or if that card is on the top, which card is on the bottom. Okay, got that? I hope you understood that. Tells you how many cards you've cut, how many cards are left in the deck. Kind of redundant, because if you know one, you can figure out the other by subtracting it from 52. That's one of the things that it does. It tells you where all the threes are, it tells you where all the diamonds are. In turn, it tells you where every card in the deck is, and so on and so forth. That's what all these dials do. The different ones do different things. I'm not, again, going to get into exactly what it is and what they do. All right, now how they work. That's for you to find out when you buy the deck. All right, so what do you get then when you open up a tuck case of the $100 deck? Well, first of all, you only get one joker. You don't get a second joker. Don't really know why, but you don't. You don't get this nifty doodle little card here, but you get USPCC quality. This is their air cushioned finish, which you are very familiar with. Fans beautifully, does all that wonderful stuff. The same thing applies here. These are in Cy Stebbins' order. The back design is exactly the same as the automatic deck. All right, so that's what you get there. You do get a couple of extra bonuses. We will talk about that shortly. How do you learn how to use these? Well, in the original deck, you got this little brochure here, if you want to call it that, a little piece of paper really. Shows you all the fancy things that the dials do and so forth. All right, it's 4 pages. That's it. All right, the whole thing's got this little diagram again to show you what order to put the cards in. More explanations of what some of the diagrams do. And on top of all that, it's got 7 tricks described on it. And you can see how tiny that print is. All right, so that's what you get with a regular automatic deck. With the $100 deck, you get this actual booklet, which has all the very same information and a little bit more. Here's another little thing to help you learn the Cy Stebbins order and how to put the deck together. Still has that nifty circular diagram, and every other diagram in here is the very same as the one that you saw in that little piece of paper. So, what else do you get? Well, besides being much more legible, you not only get the original 7 tricks that were included on that little piece of paper, you get 9 more on top of that for a total of 16. So there's a little bit of a benefit there. And it's, is it worth more? Well, it is. It's certainly worth more. I'm not sure if it's worth what they charge, but this is what you do get. You also get something that does not appear in the automatic deck, and that is this nifty little packet trick right here. And again, I am not going to get into this. I'm going to do a different video for this. This is a 3-card Monte routine, and that comes with the the $100 deck, but not the automatic deck. And there is a little explanation here in gosh knows how old that is, from the original showing you how to do that particular routine. There is also a link to a video on the Magic Maker's website that will show you YouTube style how to do the routine. So you get all that and more with the DeLand's deck. You get that much more, is what I should say. You don't really get and more, but that much more than the automatic deck. How much do these cost? Well, depending on where you buy the $100 deck, it's anywhere from $20 to $25. Okay. The automatic deck comes in several different varieties. There is a red version available through Walmart, which, for those of you who are outside the United States and don't know, is one of the, if not the major retailer in the United States. And it comes in red, $13. I believe you get the booklet like this, a similar booklet to this one, with that $13 deck. If you go to the Magic Maker's website, they do not mention a red deck. They do mention blue decks in two different prices, $15 and $16. Again, I am not sure because Rob Stiff never did get back to me, but I believe the $15 deck gets you this version with the little piece of paper, and I may very well be wrong about that. I don't really know. If you have more insight on it than I do, please let me know. And I believe the $16 version gets you this booklet, or at least a version of the booklet that perhaps doesn't include the information about the packet trick, because that does not come with the automatic deck, but you get a booklet like this instead of the little piece of paper, and this one costs you $1 more at $16. That's what I've been able to track down. I don't know how much of that is correct because Rob Stiff, as I said, did not get back to me. I would also like to point out, too, for those of you who are curious or interested, if you're familiar with the Marksman deck, you'll find that it's very similar to this DeLand's deck, because Luke Germain, about, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so ago, took a DeLand's deck, very fascinated with it, and created his own markings. And you can do different things with the Marksman deck. A couple of other tricks that you cannot do with these decks because they don't have those particular markings. So you've got the Marksman deck based on, and he will admit this, based on the DeLand's deck that Luke Germain did some work on. He expanded on it. One thing I did not mention that we should mention now is that the DeLand's decks are also stripper decks, which is very nice because, it gives you those options of being able to do card tricks where you can strip out the card and la-di-da. The Marksman deck is not stripper, okay? It's just a regular deck with a few extra markings. But from what I've been able to ascertain, you can do about 80% at least of the tricks that you can do with a Marksman deck with the DeLand's deck, because about 80% of the markings are pretty much the same, or at least do the same thing as I mentioned earlier. So that's it. That is the DeLand's automatic deck and the DeLand's $100 deck. By the way, the Marksman deck goes for a whopping $35, but you do get an hour-and-a-half video either on a DVD or a link to a video online that can teach you several tricks, 5 tricks to do with the Marksman deck. Whether you can do all or none of those tricks with the DeLand's deck, I don't know. Again, maybe somebody out there knows more about it than I do. All I know is that I've been using this deck for decades, and whenever I do, I always end up doing a trick that always leaves them baffled.